Before we start, let's quickly go over the architecture of this application. So we will have an attacker that's from outside of our network, from any IP address over the internet, go through the ISP, go through probably our router, and it's gonna attack one or attack multiple devices on our local network. So in our whole setup, in the whole architecture setup, we're gonna have the web server slash scoring engine, which gonna a lot of keep a lot of scores and some display from the database, and also we also have a honeypot. uh, the honeypot will uh, send the web server some information, that's um, and let the web server know what's happening from the attacker side, and also a lot of logs when stuff will be stored in the database, and the database will send it back to the web server or the scoring engine, and they will get a score, and they will get a weighted score. Then they will analyze if the attacker is malicious or just some like normal user um, is trying to do the wrong thing. So once if the web server identify the attacker as a legitimate attacker, they will send the IP address to multiple agents, or to a specific agent, or to all the agents. So it depends on what the attacker is trying to do. Um, then the agent will collect the logs, or collect the message string from the web server, and they will understand, oh, what's going on right now, if there's any action I need to take. For example, probably the agent will need to add some firewall rules at local, um, just like that. Yep, stuff like that. And so that's the whole overall architecture, and we will um, we will demonstrate um, what's happening in the honeypot, what's happening in the web server, and what's happening in the database, and how the agent actually react to the message that web server sends, and how the agent collecting logs from locally as well for any other purposes like auditing purposes. So here I'm gonna do a quick demo about how the attacker is gonna attack, and how our application is gonna help to protect the network environment. So under here, under this Ubuntu server, we will have, it's gonna be our honeypot, and this Kali machine is gonna be the attacker one. So let me quickly show you the IP address of the attacker. It's 10.0.2.5, and so here we have the honeypot. It's 10.0.2.6, and as we can see right now, as an attacker, they're trying to attack the internal network. That's for example, they're scanning the whole network, or scanning one of our network, which is they're gonna scan up to the honeypot, and he see, oh, on this server they get multiple ports open. That looks interesting, and we also write up we write up a attack script that's gonna attack SSH, because attacker are a big fan of open SSH files, SSH ports. So we wrote up a script that does some SSH attack. So meanwhile, this is gonna take a little bit time to run it, and we will go back to, well, it's already blocking, as we can see. The cursor stop flashing right here, and which means they already dropped the connection from this from our internal network. So our application essentially just blocked them. So let me show you something else. So as we can see, the attacker's IP is writing to the band list right here, and we will send this band, whatever the information we have in the band list, to our web server, and the web server will react based on the IP address and some other information we collect from syslog on this Ubuntu machine. Um, and I'll give you more breakdown once we actually went through the code. So let's see what's happening right here. If we do another mmap on this IP address, we will see what's happening. So the attacker is trying to attack the network again, and we can compare the result. So it's gonna be 10.0.0.2.6, and as we can see from now, it's taking longer than we expected. Uh, Maybe a little bit later, they will return a message says, "Oh, there's no port open," because we essentially blocked this IP address. Um, as we can see here, mmap scan for this, there's no port open. Everything is filtered. So this attacker has been blocked from our network. Okay, let me give you a breakdown how the whole thing actually work in the back end, and how you can what you can see in the web interface. So here we have a login panel. Just for the safety, we have to log in as admin, and you can also register as user as well. So as we can see right here, we got a we got registered IP right here. We detect the attacker, and since we already have this guy, we already did some tests like previously, so we already had the score like previously from that guy, and essentially he will get marked as a dangerous user, as a or as a malicious attacker, and we intended to block, and we will send this guy's information over to agents, and essentially the agent will actually block it. So okay, let me give you a breakdown how that actually works, and what kind of information we are sending from here to there. So right now here we have a server, we call it sensor. It's essentially the web server instance running, and we also have a agent instance running as well. So the agent essentially is post this kind of message string to the web server, and the web server will, based on the IP address and based on the port number, web server will assign a value to it, and based on the value, if it's malicious, you can send it to agent, you can send it to agent's instance, and the agent um, will actually do some action based on what it is. Like for example, like add a firewall rule or something. Let me show you how everything works. Let's start our agent right here. So this is gonna give you a breakdown. Every time you're running the agent will collect some sample information and some logs from your local machine. Essentially, it will be right to the Windows system logs, um, and I'll explain that part later. First of all, let's look at the web server. For example, we have a different IP address here. Uh, 10.192.0.2.5, let's say, or .10, something like that. So this guy is trying some random stuff on the network. For example, they send a message to port 8080, and this guy will be show up on the dashboard. Essentially, the dashboard is a reflection. Right now, it's a reflection of the database. And for example, he tried to do something else, right? He scanned, oh, there's a SSH, or let's say FTP port open, like port 21 open. And oh, then he tried again, and we will mark that as a malicious user or malicious attacker. So at this point, maybe it's not that dangerous. It's just like, oh, it's like medium critical. It's not critical level. Yeah, it's like medium. But if they tried it again, like try the port 22, um, his score will get updated as well. And as we can see here, from the sensor point of view, the sensor will actually detect it and asking for a firewall rule name. So let's say test, like test demo. We'll do that, and it will tell you what kind of rule it's going to be at, like the port number, the IP address. Essentially, we don't really care about the port number right now. We just, based on the user activity, we're just going to block the whole IP address. And let me show you here. Windows Firewall, and we can see the rule has been updated to the Windows Firewall. It's going to be an inbound rule, and let's see, yep. So we named the firewall rule as project test demo right here, and the inbound rule will be added to this, and it's going to be a block inbound rule, and the remote address is going to be 192.0.2.10. So basically, that's how that actually works for the whole project. And as we can see, we're sending this message string to the server, to the web server, or to whatever sensor, and it's going to update the database, and the agent, it's going to keep waiting and keep collecting logs in the back end, and until the server sends the information to agent, and agent will say, oh, is there any action I'll need to take? For example, in this time I need to add some firewall rules. And speaking of auditing purpose, for example, this machine got compromised, and how do we detect that, right? So from here, we actually write a lot of stuff to Windows system logs. For example, these logs will be keep collecting in the back end, and it's gonna have its own special event. It's gonna have its own special event ID, and it all depends what kind of stuff you want. It's just gonna keep running in the back end. There's a config file you can config that you can ask the program what kind of logs you want to collect. Can show you right here. So there's a sample config file you can config to show the program what kind of stuff you want to run. And in order to run this program, we also need to assign some parameters as well. Because the program actually takes a parameter. For example, it needs the config file, so it knows what kind of stuff you pull, and it knows what kind of stuff you are asking and what kind of action they want to take. And the program can also generate a sample config file for you if you don't know how to write the sample config file. So basically right now it's running under everything that's config in the sample config file right here. And also another reason we actually write to Windows system event logs, because we're not the only security vendor, right? We still have a lot of other vendor on the market, like some other third-party vendor, for example, like Splunk and like SourceFire. So they have their own log forwarder and their log collector, and they all collect logs from Windows system log, Windows log event. And so a lot of company they would like to add everything to their other security vendors. So whatever we write it to the Windows logs, it will be forwarded to any other application as well. So in the future, it will get incorporated in some other companies' software as well. So that will be all. So for your own testing purpose, the whole agent project needs a parameter, and if you go to properties and here under debug, you need to put some command line arguments. There are a couple of command line arguments as well you can put in. Um, you can put in basically like backslash like that. That's if you put like that, it's gonna give you all the option you can put. Or if you just put the config file, it's gonna run based on the config file. And so we mentioned about the agent will actually keep collecting stuff and writing to logs. We also can verify that if you want to test it or just want to verify it. It also writes to a file that wherever your agent program gets executed. So this output file will be right to under the current directory. As you can see, it's going to be an XML file. Um, yeah. So this is just for testing purpose. Thank you for watching.